Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
You know, after having been the two guards, but it certainly has paid dividends for St. John's of late. Mitchell, Sherry, look at Kaluma again. Jagger.
And the bounce to Tomanaga, the cutter, corrals it, and gets two on the board. Those two are in some kind of rhythm right now. Walker, the Euro step to the rim, and the first Nebraska field goal. Hoiberg, open for three. For the coach's son, huge shot. Now Walker on the attack to the rim for tie. And Young's got to be in the gap there, but a heck of a play from Derek Walker. It'll be Hart inbound for Maryland. And Hoiberg with a steal. The coach's son with a three-point lead. Coming up with the huge steal. Timed it up perfectly. Lays it in. Amazing. Huskers win it. 70-66. Nebraska. And even 500 on the year.
Good morning, everybody. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Happy President's Day to all of those who celebrate, or if you're just excited about having a day off today. I think that's at least the majority of the kids in school, the workforce, whatever you're doing today on Monday. You're like, man, I have a 3-day weekend.
Yeah.
This is great. Go Presidents. Right? Go Presidents. Thank you for today's off.
Ruru Jackson. Oh, Georgie Washington.
Oh, baby.
Oh,
Some of that Ruru Johnson.
O-O-W.
Yeah. Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Woo-wee.
Name all. Okay. Question for you.
Uh-oh.
How many presidents have there been in history?
39.
I'm going to take the over.
Oh yeah, that's true because your boy was 45, right? So let's go with 46.
Who's my boy?
Wasn't the Donald? What was his tag on people had on the license plates? 44 or 45? I think so. There's been 46.
46 is correct.
Thank
nice
you.
Work. Nice
Do you like
work.
how I kind of work backwards?
You know what? Isn't it funny though how if it weren't for a certain tag,
Yeah, I wouldn't know
because before you said that, I don't think I would have gotten it.
Yeah,
right.
and I just pulled 39 out of my rear end because you asked me so fast. But yeah, just work a little bit. You know how my brain works.
But I think that's the majority of people out there,
Yeah.
unless you're a history buff or you just know more than DB and I, which is probably true in both regards.
Good chance that's going to be a thing. This and
Mhm.
thing, chicken, wang.
How was your weekend?
Weekend.
I'm sure it wasn't busy at all. Nothing happened.
It's very busy. Very, very busy. So we had baseball, we had state wrestling, which preoccupied my time. We had an overtime high school game against Bellevue West that was sensational. Millard North girls with an impressive win in a top 5 matchup over Bellevue West, so that was cool. West Side girls hung in there against Bellevue West the following night. And then local basketball. I'm not sure how I feel about baseball. I was talking to you about it earlier. Did I expect only 2 wins out of this weekend? No.
I don't think so.
So, I don't know. We'll see. I'm not going to start that whole.
It's opening weekend.
Yeah.
It's opening weekend.
Yeah. But, I mean, you do got to find a way to probably play a little bit better. I think it was expected for Omaha to have a tough time.
No doubt
on
no
their
doubt.
roadie, but I think he wanted to
That's
fare.
why they schedule like that.
Yeah, I think he wanted to fare better in San Diego.
Yeah.
Shane,
You want to be competitive
there's
in
an
Cali.
Anchorman reference in there.
You want to be competitive in Cali. One team was game 3 for Omaha. I mean, 8-1 isn't the end of the world.
But you're going
with
to say
how those
game
first
3
two-
for Nebraska getting up.
I'm sorry,
8-2.
game 3. Excuse me.
8-2.
Right. Well, yeah, and game 3 for Nebraska. I mean, we compare a lot to football on this show, whether it's blowing fourth quarter leads a good amount last year. I mean, it can be the same in regards to this game.
There are 3 out of the last 4 games you had held teams scoreless at the half in football,
Mm-hmm.
and only won one of those games.
Right. And so to maybe tie something together with baseball here. You got to find a way to win. And man,
It's
let's talk about maybe some of the adversity Nebraska had to overcome in that game. A hit by pitch, and then was it a lean? Is that how it went down?
I guess
a lean. Okay, we'll call that not lean cuisine. A lean,
not lean back.
Pitch.
A lean back,
and then a half inning later.
Yep, you're in trouble.
Similar instance, and let's just say the head coach at Nebraska didn't like what he saw and didn't like the call.
But here's the thing, though. At that point, and I'm sure, when he talks about it, there's a certain level of frustration that has to do with some other things that help all of that bubble over. Because I think in the back of his mind, that staff, you don't expect yourself to be in that situation either. So, like you're extra,
and you're frustrated because your 6-run lead, started to get.
Yeah, they scored the
on.
first 4 innings. After kind of, I wouldn't call it a dormant weekend, but I think they expected a little more offensive oomph until that Sunday. But
I think a lot of teams wanted that. Creighton, however, did provide that at McNeese.
Yeah.
My family was in town this weekend.
Yes.
I had the parents. I had my brother.
How were things?
The weekend was fantastic, and
I imagine. And this was only my 4 hours with him, roughly. I would imagine your brother is a lot more cool than you are.
Isn't the word cooler over more cool? Is that why I'm not as cool as my brother?
I think the delivery of the sentence matters. It's
why is he cooler than me?
He just seemed
some good things.
Yeah, that, Bo. He just seemed like he was a little more like he could hit a changeup or a curveball a little better.
He played tennis.
You know what I mean? Like he doesn't mind a little. Wow, I would not have guessed that.
Dad played tennis.
That I knew. I would not have guessed that.
He did his senior year.
Looked like a big, strong guy.
He played baseball his senior year.
So, well, he has that swing.
Mm-hmm.
That's my.
Yeah, nice. Hey, what do you Wii tennis?
Yes. Actually, that was my whip and my nay-nay.
Oh,
we had a play. Well, I won't say.
Well, what is this?
One of our signals is. That's what it looks like, and so our offensive coordinator, coach our quarterbacks, coach level, when he signals it in, he'd always give it a little extra wiggle, so we would act like he was dancing. But anyway, I rapidly go down that little bunny hole. But he seems like a little more go with the flow
than me. Ouch.
Is that not true? Is that inaccurate?
I feel like I'm go with the flow. He's go with the flow for sure.
No, it's varying degrees. It's not if you are or you aren't. Gosh, you sound like Jay. I didn't say you were or weren't. I said he seems more go with the flow. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Not that you're not. Not that you're not.
100%.
Yeah. He's kind of loosey, goosey. And I saw him stir his coffee.
I think
and it changed color, so I think he had some cream in there.
I think independency did that to me.
Yeah, because you've been on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my go away from that so-called statement of being go with the flow, because now it's like, how much can I go with the flow? Now I have to micromanage so many different things just to be an adult.
You're adulting.
Not to say that living at home is an issue at all, but when you put on those stressors, takes away some things. But no, they were in town.
Did you take? So I know when you went down the state, you went by yourself. They didn't go with you over the weekend, right?
No.
To watch any wrestling?
No. Did
they take in the scenery?
Little bit. So after we got out of the show on Friday, Joe and I played a little golf at the simulator. Did a few activities in the evening, and then my parents came down on Saturday, and we went to my hidden gem in town. You know the hidden gem in town.
Okay.
The local spot. And then after,
did you quintuple the attendance, or was it busy?
We did, but after church, it started to flow. Like people were
Dude, you're
heading
just
in.
like chilling on a Sunday, getting it in.
No, this was Saturday night.
Okay, so
Saturday
after
night.
church, after
Yeah.
mass.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. Oh man, could you imagine Sunday morning?
Well,
Oh,
listen,
bro, let me
I
tell
don't know
you.
where the mimosa's flowing.
That is true. That is true. So then we came over to Hale Varsity Club, and they wanted to have like the full experience of what Hale Varsity Club had to offer. So we started with the charcuterie board, which is the giant pretzel. We got the cheese curds, corn nuggets, and onion rings, which let's give credit to that kitchen staff because they were slammed.
Dude,
Completely.
don't I tell you about their
slammed.
Saturday nights?
Oh my!
I always tell a
goodness.
story it's wild, right? Because 3 of the last 4, like I've gotten to goes, and so I'll stop in, and it's
funny.
circus.
So the parking lot was packed. I dropped Ashley off. I said, "Hey, run inside, see how long like the wait time is for a table." Because I didn't call ahead or anything. We found a parking spot, and Ashley calls me as I'm still in the car, and she's like, "Hey, they said it's going to be about 30 minutes." And you know me, out of all things to say next, I go,
It ain't gonna be 30 minutes.
I go, they can't find a table for the guy that works here.
You probably did
Sure
too.
did. Sure
Throwing all 141 pounds of your weight around.
Oh yeah, and I'm like, well, if you had Ashley's, we have an extra 125.
I'll take the under.
No joke, 2 minutes later, there was a table that opened up. I think it was coincidence, but I'm going to say it was me.
It was your stroke.
It was me.
So did they have, what did they have on? Because there was a ton going on. Was one of the TVs on state wrestling?
No.
Interesting. Was one of the TVs, Creighton was
on the big screen.
Yep. Okay, so we knew that. What else was on? What were they splitting time with?
Man, my eyes were just on Creighton. And when I'm with my family, I don't want to, because I don't get a lot of those interactions. So
I hear you.
I wanted to make sure that I wasn't like, oh, I got to watch this game. I'm like, I'm going to watch this game later.
Okay. Yeah, I got you.
So I
had a couple of things in the library.
Yeah. There were a ton in my library on Sunday night. But my dad, leave it to my dad. So we're looking at the menu, what to order. And he's like, I think I'm going to get the Benning burger. And I'm like, oh, no kidding. WWBD.
Yeah, that's my guy,
This
man.
is literally what Barry would do. Get Damon Benning's.
How was it?
burger.
It looked fantastic.
He finished the whole thing.
Yeah, I've had
And
it about
he
17
left.
times.
He walked out of this place and goes, I shouldn't have eaten that whole burger. He's like, my stomach hurts. Yeah, there's a lot of food on there, Dad.
Yeah,
That sounds familiar.
That burger, yeah. And
Like me every day when I sit down to eat.
and he's not a tall guy, according to old Ruru over
All
here.
5'9" of them.
And he would dwarf you, Shane. No pun intended.
Oh, ouch.
But
So
it was a good weekend.
but I couldn't tell who was fanboying more, if it was him or if it were you when I was texting you about him getting your burger.
yeah,
Were
Captain
you
America.
fanboying more than my dad? Was he?
I just felt like
fanboying?
I just felt like he had pretty good taste.
I mean, you guys would get along.
I felt like he had pretty good pace. It was taste. It was such a crazy weekend, like emotionally, like because I didn't want to watch. And Alvin Mitchell, I've told you this before. Like when we're at games together and Creighton's playing, we're both in a dilemma. He's just being a good parent. I'm trying to watch Creighton. I'm trying to work, right? Like.
And be a good parent.
But yeah. Oh, by the way, but there was so much going on because they had a 5:15 tip on Saturday, and I wanted to watch the initial finals that were starting in it's state wrestling too. So I kid you not, sitting in the corner where we always sit, there's 3 different people that have state wrestling on the 4-way on their monitors. So I just put my phone down and we're sneaking peeks because one of the moms, her son Sawyer, wrestles. He's a little guy. He's a first grader, but I think he could be really good. And so his mom had wrestling on. So our offensive coordinator had wrestling on his phone, and we're like, shoot, no need to watch this little 2-incher. Let's get on the monitor, right? So we were totally, unlike you, distracted trying to multitask, doing 15 things. And you have to get Nebraska Public Media on like YouTube, like you better put that in your library because you're not finding those broadcasts again unless you order the DVD. So they make sure you get one shot at it, or you're ordering the DVD.
And how many people have DVD players?
Hey, so I got 2 from the state championship. I have no idea how I'm going to watch them. I got to find an old computer or something.
You can get an adapter for your computer.
Can I? Well,
Yeah.
thanks for looking out.
Yeah.
Do you know that I just found that there's a DVD player in my car and it's in the glove box? I had no idea.
A literal DVD player?
Yeah, no idea.
Like a portable one? Just like one that flips
like
up?
you put it in. It's like in the thing.
So do you have a...
No, that's the thing. You have to get a monitor from somewhere. I guess it's an addition to.
Why would they give you
I
the
don't
player
know.
and not the monitor?
I don't know.
Are you sure the monitor doesn't come out from somewhere? Comes
Well,
up from the floor.
That would be interesting.
Right.
There's a lot of things I don't know. Apparently my
Yeah.
vehicle too. But it was a great weekend. And then I felt like a bad parent again yesterday because my little guy had 2 games, but I wanted to watch Nebraska's duels. And then Nebraska basketball was getting ready to tip off. So I was the guy that walked next door and asked to change the television.
Can you really be that guy, though, here in this state?
So I cased the joint for like 10 minutes. I took my time because I didn't want to
around the building like you did
this
morning.
Yes, I did. I needed some fresh air. And I wanted to see, since it's trash day in our neighborhood, I wanted to see if it was going to be trash day here. So I looked to see what was in the dumpster back there.
You know what's great?
Were you guys wondering what I was doing?
You know what's great? We have a door right here that
Yeah,
leads
so-
you to the back.
I took the scenic route and I didn't even take my keys. But anyway, so I looked around and I went in the there's like 3 TVs on the end, and it was people were bowling and whatever, and I just wanted to watch television. So it was golf, something getting ready for the All-Star game.
Oh, NBA.
So it was on like the NBA
Right.
channel, and then the other one was XFL, and I was like, oh no. Like I did watch XFL this weekend.
So did I.
But we're not doing that. We're gonna ask to change this television. We're gonna put the TV in the middle on the duels. So, and the guy was cool, man. It's an older guy. You could tell so it was just in time for me to fret and then be okay with what Nebraska was doing on the mat, because it was a slow start against Arizona. And then
you were
then I watched
infatuated with Pinto.
I am. I was truly infatuated with Pinto, but I've been kind of telling you this. Wrestling over the last couple of years, all the things that I grew up knowing and seeing are like archaic and unconventional, or too conventional now. Now it's like, it's so unorthodox and so customized. That's such and
To the
such
person.
That's such and such move, or that's what he does, or that's what she does, or that's how she. There is no.
Do you ever notice too how
I've seen some this weekend. I mean, just at the high school level, like you see moves that I'm not used to seeing.
because you see him in college? That's what I was going to say. Do you ever notice the trickle down effect
Yeah.
from what
Oh,
you
yeah.
see in
Oh, yeah.
college and then what you saw at the state tournament this weekend?
And you see a lot of youth meets, right? Because Bud's son wrestles, and I was telling you about Sawyer. I wanted to go see him the other day out at Iowa Western, and you see the trickle down effect. Some of these clubs, it's like, I wonder what my dad would see on www.don do. What would WWD do? Because I think not only would he be floored at how far women's wrestling has come, that it's a thing now, I think some of the moves and the risk taking because of the athleticism, he'd be like, whoa.
Yeah, because it's not very conservative anymore.
Listen, but I was infatuated with Pinto because he did it from. So it's not just the move that he pulled off, how he pulled it off.
It's how his body moved.
It's how his body moved. And the strength that it takes from the flat back position to roll your hips without really bringing your feet with you, to be strong enough in your upper body to control your opponent.
I'd venture to say core too.
It was, I just was like, I got to see that again. So then I was looking for videos online, and I cropped every last one of them. I'm stopping that thing by the millisecond to get the picture that
And then you're
wanted.
walking up to the TV.
No, that was basketball.
Oh.
I did have to go close. I'm sure people were looking at me like, and I didn't say a word. My old neighbors were in there because their son played. And so I talked to them for like 4 minutes. But other than that, I didn't talk to a soul. Not one person in there other than the guy that I asked
Sometimes
to change
that's
the television.
okay. I told you I did that last week.
Well, I felt so bad because there's so many TVs. He had to get the remote just right. So he was putting it at like just the right angle behind the TV to not to change the other TVs.
Is he standing on one?
And he
foot
had
and
to
holding
find the right
antennas?
remote too. And I was like, oh my God, I'm only going to be in here. I'm just killing time in between these two games. I feel a little high maintenance. So then I was overly nice to him because I felt bad. But yeah, man, it was a packed weekend. Packed.
Jam-packed.
And I was I don't know, man. There's just a lot going on. Got, my buddy's son's got a chance to be a 4-time state champ. He's halfway there. We saw Lordson in an amazing match. We'll talk to Nick Rubek, and he's last. Shane, is he 940?
He is at 9:45. That is correct.
That is correct.
We got to catch up on hoops. Nebraska offering 8th graders that I've seen his whole life. So I know I know the family.
Can you imagine showing up at school tomorrow and in your Nebraska hoodie or whatever? I don't know. Is it a private? Like,
No, it's public school.
Right?
Yeah, it's public. He's at a public school.
And you just show up and you're like, yeah, that was me.
Yeah, Nebraska offers Torrey Pittman.
But you give donuts? Like, do you bring in like red sprinkled donuts?
I mean, he's been the man literally for a long time, so I'm sure he's used to it. He's a big, strong, physically mature kid. I don't know what the ceiling is. I just know.
Well, if you're getting offered in 8th grade,
Yeah.
it's looking like the ceiling's pretty high.
That's some Fournette type stuff. He's a man child out there. And I was surprised a little bit. I wasn't surprised, but because I showed you the video early of Coach Rule, and I said, yeah, what do you see in this, the sled picture?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it was going to be controversial, but of course, Nebraskans make it a controversy, man. Listen, I'm not here to tell you how to be a fan, but feel free to not have to critique everything.
Right.
Like, can't people just like do their thing and you're like, hey,
Have
man,
some
good.
fun.
Hey, man, good on you. You know what I mean? Because I do think there's something, and I'm dead serious. Like, I do think there's something to conditioning your body to handle the elements. I do.
In this state in particular.
Like, there's just something to be said for. We didn't. My previous stop was the same way with Coach Martin. When we're outside, we're outside. And we know that if you want to play in November, you need to be able to play outside. And at some point, you got to condition yourself for the elements. But Nebraska couldn't even pull that off without people critiquing it.
Oh, as DB said, lots happening or did happen this weekend. I mean, the Daytona 500 took place. Did that kind of fall under people's radar? I don't know.
Dude, I didn't know Lightning McEwen had lost 199 starts before he won that one. Wow.
That happens.
The Genesis
was not a very
Invitational
good race.
was something too, and we'll get into a talking point there as well. Plenty more to get to. Stick
Ronald, stay right there.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back to the show, 888-638-4876. If you'd like to get involved, it's Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, 590 ESPN Omaha. We are KFOR from 9 to 10 in Lincoln, live on YouTube, live on Twitter. Everything turns into a song for Damon Benning, who is sitting to my left in the chair. Both of us wearing OMAVs gear. Oddly enough, we did not call each other or talk to each other prior to.
No, sir.
It is funny, though, because Friday you wore Nebraska gear, and you're like, man, I don't normally wear Husker gear, and now today you're repping Omaha, so tomorrow's got to be Creighton, right?
So I do have some Creighton gear. I got a great quarter zip. It doesn't fit the way that I want it to, so I'm a little reluctant. I got a couple nice T-shirts, and I had a nice shoe delivery from this weekend.
Shoe fly, don't bother me.
Courtesy of Creighton. So enhanced my shoe game quite a bit. I don't know like what I'm going to wear them with, but
Are they fire? They're probably fire.
unreal.
Unreal.
Unreal. like
like the best pie he's ever eaten.
Yeah.
Unreal.
It probably wouldn't be a pie though. It'd have to be like a steak or lamb chops or something like that.
It was just an example, but okay.
Maybe Casey Tomanaga. Maybe Derek Walker.
Yeah,
maybe those uniforms.
That's one heck of a pie.
So
let me tell you.
I asked last year and I can't remember what my answer was, but are they auctioning those off, do you think? Or what are they doing with those jerseys?
They should. It would be a shame if they just packed them in a closet
and waited till next February.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But can you imagine what you can get for something like that?
No,
especially now at this stage. Think about the marketing move. With how successful this team has been in this month and the back end of last, you could get a lot of money for those jerseys right now.
So
sell them now.
I was leaving basketball yesterday, and another guy was watching, and he basically was like, "Man, can you imagine if they had just 2 more wins? We'd be talking about should they get in." And I, in my head, you know me, Mr. Pragmatic, I was like, I don't know about 2, but I get the point, right?
Why not?
Be honest, when Maryland went on the run and they took the lead, what was it, like 42-34, something like that. They go up 6 or 7.
It's always how it goes, right?
Were you like, man, they just blew that lead. This is a heck of a run.
I thought that
this
when
is
it was
NC
like
State, North Carolina. They're going to kick them off the bubble with that run. Mm-hmm. And Nebraska was just having none of it.
They have fight, man.
Fight. And I don't. It's weird how they do it because you only turn Maryland. They turned them over 12 times. They shot like they were terrible shooting the basketball, and they just found a way to win. Like it again, a perfect illustration of why you don't just look at the box score. If you see that Nebraska only made 3 threes,
18.8%,
and Casey Tomanaga was your leading scorer. There's Tomanaga. You probably think, oh man, Nebraska, they didn't win.
Well, Walker actually dropped 23.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is when the player that has been the hottest player for you,
right,
and you have kind of made Wilcher had gotten it going shooting the basketball. If you look and you see only 3 of 16 from 3, you don't think Nebraska won.
No,
let alone in overtime. And that's the second gritty OT performance in 10 days where you're like, we may have something here.
I may side with your guy too, who said, hey, 2 more wins, we may be talking about something special.
So 2 more wins would put them at 16-12, right? Because they're 500 right now. And Sam McKewon is safe as a kitten.
16-14.
No, 2 more wins with the schedule that they played. So it still has to be of the 28 games. So I'm just saying 16-12.
I'm with you.
But I still think you're right. 16-14, you're for sure having a conversation. 16-12, you're for sure having.
When you talk about hot teams that play spoiler, which is what this team's doing right now. John Rothstein said it. I know you guys aren't the biggest Rothstein
I like Rothstein.
I think
the fans. I think basketball fans. So you know what it is, and he embraces it. He made it a shtick. John Rothstein used to pump out news, like breaking news, and he would never cite sources. And people used to drive him crazy because his accuracy was just okay. And so then he made it kind of a thing, sources said. And he would not cite sources. And so then I think fans just kind of started to get on him a little bit about it. But I like his creativity.
I think it's hilarious. But he said last week Pinnacle Bank Arena was where Big Ten bubble teams went to die. And then he said this week is where teams in the NCAA tournament picture go to die. And, if you looked at this Nebraska team with how well they're playing right now, this is if you could make them an honorary team into March Madness, they would upset some people. That's that is this team. They would be a so-called 12 or 13 seed that would beat the 4.
Yeah.
That would beat the 5.
I don't know about that, but listen, I'm riding this wave.
Hey, but since you can't do that, since you can't be the honorary team, how about you just win the Big Ten?
Hey, that's not how it works, is it?
Right? Isn't that how it works, right? You just you get in by winning your conference. You know, they've been hearing this for the past 2 months. And right off,
yeah,
showing no attention. And when I say showing no attention, like, you know, the fan base isn't like totally engaged with the product of basketball. It's more, hey, what are we doing with Hoiberg? Oh man, what a season this could have been. And the team reacted with belief, they reacted with hope, they reacted with response, and they reacted with buyback.
Dude. And who would have, and I remember a couple weeks ago, you were so mad over the disrespect for Coach Guard at Wisconsin. You're like, it's 2 Big Ten titles and blah, blah, blah. Would you have thought, though, real talk, Nebraska would only be trailing Wisconsin by a game in the Big Ten?
Nope, not one bit.
It's unbelievable.
Not one bit.
And it's and a couple of those, it's always, I'm telling you, it's a heck of a coaching moment. It's not just coach speak when you say if to stay in the moment and maximize, because you know what happens typically at the end of the season when you have some regret? If we only would have. Man, could we go back and get? So what you have to do is when you're in that moment, make sure that you're not saying that to yourself at the end of the season. Because Nebraska would like to go back and get a couple. And if you're talking about literally a 2-game swing, imagine from 14-14 to 16-12. Now you're having some serious debates because Nebraska men's basketball is doing everything that, unfortunately, and she's one of my favorites, Nebraska women's basketball hasn't been able to do, and that's overcome injury and get timely wins. And so they're trending in the wrong direction.
In a tough, hefty Big Ten.
Man, listen, that's big time basketball. That is a great women's basketball conference. And how fast, and maybe I'm just a prisoner of the moment, so tell me if I'm wrong. How fast has Iowa become public enemy number 1 across the board? I get the football thing, but even that was a slow burn. See, you weren't here yet, and it infuriated me that Nebraska would not embrace the fact that Iowa hated their guts. And I would tell these guys, this was probably 12, 13, 14. And I'd talk to these guys, Brandon Riley. I'm like, you realize Iowa fans hate Nebraska. And you better figure out a way to embrace this rivalry because they enjoy kicking your teeth in. Fast forward 7-8 years later, the back and forth between Nebraska and Iowa are ridiculous. And just yesterday, poor Doc, we may have to get Scott Docterman this week. Kind of an innocuous tweet. Hey, Caitlin Clark's on the road. Nebraska fans travel 8,900 more than their normal attendance. And boom, Nebraska fans clap back. Hey, we've been pointing this game all year. This was the big game. Like, don't get it twisted. It's not just about Caitlin. I'm like, this is like genuine.
Do you still think that she won't be Player of the Year?
I don't know. It's going to be close.
She's winning Player of the Year.
Bro, you got a supernova, though. And her stats, they're on par. The problem with Caitlin, the problem with trying
you're going
to dethrone Caitlin Clark, she's got a national audience.
That's what it is. The popularity status of Caitlin Clark is going to win that award.
in a better conference. Dude, the logo, though. Just pulling up from the logo because she can. Oh, how about how she like taunts the fan base though?
Yeah,
she's running into the corner.
Embraces the rivalry.
Yeah.
Random Mike, hang out on the line. We'll get to you next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds.
Breesel working against Young. Drives all the way end to end. And the foul.
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
And that's really the offense, and what it's centered around is trying to free up Tomanaga for threes, because the attention he attracts just like this, right on cue, can create opportunities for others. But his movement without the ball, Kevin, is as good as you'll see in college basketball right now. His skill setting up a television conversation, excellent as well with that three. Right? It's like, really do appreciate that.
That's the man they call the Japanese Steph Curry, Keisei Tomanaga, shooting from the logo, as we talked about, like Caitlin Clark kind of does for Iowa. You heard from Nick Baugh and Kevin Kugler. They were on the call for that game. And as we finish up our thoughts on Nebraska basketball, let's go to line one. We'll talk to Random Mike, who believes Nebraska is going to the NIT.
Very well,
Mike, good morning.
Hey, guys. NIT for the men. and the women is a really good thing. But the question I have for you guys is the plus-minus stat in basketball. Is that available to us fans?
I'm not sure. So sometimes it is, Mike, like ESPN will sometimes do it, but you're right. We do. So I think people in the media get it from our stat broadcast.
From box scores.
From the stat broadcast app.
Now, what does that mean, the stat broadcast?
So if you have games, like let's say I'm getting ready to do a broadcast, you can log into what's called Stat Broadcast. It's like the national app that the colleges use, and they use it for all the sports. So even when I'm doing like CWS or basketball or football, like that stat app is available. So they do all the sports. Like I should send you the link.
Well, I'm talking to.
And they always do plus minus. They do sub in, sub out, innings played, innings pitched. Like it's really, really thorough. So it's not like
Matt Coatney said that it's available to fans and him. And I know like Kent Pavelka after a game would mention the plus minus stats for different players.
Yeah.
And they don't publish that in the stats that Nebraska fans get on the website.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. It's because both those guys, Coatney and KP, they use Stat Broadcast. And Stat Broadcast
can you use your
Go ahead.
Can you use your influence to have them publish that with the stat line and the box score? Because a lot of people do. I know the NBA does that. But here's my point about the Nebraska, the men's game. Those two reserves, Keita and Fred's kid, Sammy, we don't win the game without those guys, and their plus-minus that had to be really good, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
because
Sam was 5 that game, and Keita was actually -1, but that's relatively okay.
Mike, you're the perfect guy to ask, because I feel like I talk about plus-minus all the time, and I always preface this, Mike, and I say, I know plus-minus isn't the end-all, be-all, because it's interesting. Sometimes it matters who you're on the floor with. Right,
no,
when you're out there. So how important do you think plus minus is? Because I go back and forth, but it does mean something.
No, it's like a lot of things. It's not perfect, but it's a good thing.
So let me ask you something, because I got to ask Mike this, because he follows women's basketball close too. How much of what we saw with the crowd and Coach Williams and kind of her imploring the fans, and Nebraska was building to this all year versus the Caitlin Clark being in the building distinction did you make? Right? I was talking about Doctorman's tweet. He's like, Nebraska, 8,900 over attendance. And I was like, yes and no. They've been wanting to build up to this game forever, and Caitlin Clark did happen to be in the building. But all the autograph seekers didn't help my argument.
Yeah, and how many Iowa fans, I think a lot of Iowa fans did not come dressed in Iowa gear.
See, it didn't look like it. Like they had their little corner and then the smattering, but wouldn't you think that
I think there were more of them there than we know.
Yeah.
Because if you're an Iowa fan, this is a very special Iowa team, and she's a generational player. You would come to Nebraska to watch.
I'd probably agree with that. What do you think? Can I ask you one more question, Mike, since you are in the know all the
Absolutely.
time? Why do you think Nebraska men's basketball is able to overcome the injury situation quicker or easier than the women's team? Just the depth?
That's a great question. Yeah, and Widener, I don't think you can underestimate how important she was to the team, don't you think?
Yeah, I listened to her. I'm a big Connor guy. I went back and listened to that interview, and her explaining all the things that Widener does. I was like, it's a pretty extensive checklist.
And she's the best athlete on the team.
How do you feel about the net rankings? Accurate or no?
Yeah. Like, that's beyond my pay grade. I have no idea. But let me tell you about Iowa fans.
Okay.
Let me tell you about Iowa fans. I deal with them all the time. And I was a double agent because when Mike Gesell went to Iowa,
you used to call me about Mike Gesell. Do you remember those days?
Look, when he went to Iowa, and the same thing with Leah Brown, at Michigan. These are my favorite players. So when they didn't go to Nebraska or left Nebraska, I was still rooting for them. And guess what? I started rooting for their team.
Mm-hmm.
And I was rooting for Iowa then, and I became close to them, and I realized we don't like Iowa. They hate Nebraska. There's a difference.
Isn't that it? So I was just telling Andrew that. Do you think now, though, Mike, Nebraska fans have embraced the fact that they really just don't like us? I think we thought we were kind of too cool to like get in the weeds, but it's personal.
Oh, definitely. And I'm a little disappointed that, for example, the volleyball player, Mendelson, I thought she would be more of a factor
Maggie?
at this point because I think her best game was her first game.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes, but that versatility, because didn't you think coming out she was going to be a better basketball player than a volleyball player, or did you think volleyball over basketball?
Yeah, I honestly had no idea, but I love the fact that she's going for both. And let me tell you what my dream was, and then I'll go.
Okay.
We talked about Cam Kozel and his tremendous talent. My dream was he would go to Nebraska and do what Schwellenbach did on the baseball team and also play quarterback, and that would be fantastic.
Mike, you're the best. Call us anytime, buddy.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks, Mike.
He's
Going back
amazing.
to your first point, I'm on the side of plus minus mattering.
So, do you know what? Full disclosure,
Go,
because you're a hockey guy, so we can have this
That's
conversation.
why plus minus matters.
But it's gotten antiquated in hockey.
Right. And, I actually got into it with a former
Would you
player
agree?
one time about plus minus. Yeah.
Plus minus in hockey has kind of turned into what RPI is in basketball.
A little bit.
It used to be the end all be all. Now the way the game is played transitionally and two-way, I'm like,
I still die on the hill, though, of, especially in hockey, it's a total team game out there. Everybody has to be moving, you have to be doing the right thing. You have to be in the right
yeah, but
spot.
what if you get
always
caught
have
in like the middle of shifts? It matters like who you're on the
So-
ice with.
So that's a little bit different when you're talking about, hey, line changing. Oh, pass up, up the ice, breakaway, goal. Okay, well, you can't really handle that. Yeah, you get attributed with a minus on your stat. But all in all, more times than not, you see goals taking place on PKs. You see goals taking place on 5-on-5 play. There aren't all those runs anymore. I haven't seen, at least this year in particular, I have not seen a lot of runs where a line change has caused you to get a minus on the box score.
So what about this? Like, Jazz Shelley and Lex Markowski stay on the floor. You sub 3 out. Hybe gets a blow.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa goes. You're in the fourth quarter. Iowa goes on a 10-1 run. Right? You're gonna get. That's a -9 in terms of plus minus
Right.
with time on the floor, but it's not necessarily indicative of how you as an individual were playing.
No, it's the team. It's
Right.
a team stat.
So,
and that's why I like it.
but to Mike's point, when you talk plus minus and use individual players, it can go both ways, but you have to get inside the numbers, because
Right.
what you're saying is actually what I'm arguing the other way when you want to validate just one guy,
Right.
right?
I'm with you.
Or gal,
Yeah, I'm with you.
because it's hard to
But
figure.
it also shows how that one player plays with the team on the floor.
Yeah, well, so I was, for instance, I'm an NBA guy, right? Always in the NBA, second group comes in, one starter stays on the floor. The other night, it was LeBron. LeBron stays in the game. He's got 4 guys on the bench. From the bench, they're playing Portland. Portland subs as well. Lillard takes a blow. LeBron goes like +7, something like that, against Rip City. And I was like, see, that's why I don't really love plus minus. Like, he was clearly the best player on the floor. He's playing against the second unit from Portland, and he's the beneficiary of just a fortuitous situation. Now, that's an isolated example, but it happens all the time. I used to always watch it early on with Sharif, because defensively he found a way to change the game. There's a couple guys on the high school level where I'll be talking to guys and I'll say, you know what? He can't guard anybody, so he'll never have a good plus minus. So I'll say that in passing, knowing that it has value. I just don't know to what degree. you know, I know it matters because I watched a guy go to the bench in a high school game this weekend, and the opposing team went on an 11-1 run. There's still 4 of the starters out on the floor, but they closed the half with an 11-1 run.
Well, if you pull Kalkbrenner off the floor for Creighton,
that's
how many times does a team go on a run down low?
So I had a fantastic conversation with one of the guys that runs a couple of facilities this weekend, and we were talking about Kalkbrenner, and he was asking me about him coming back and kind of what I thought and his importance, and I was like, oh my God, I think I'm talking to Andrew Rogers. I seriously think I'm talking.
Were you just talking to Andrew? Is he here?
Dude, you guys sounded the exact. He said, "When you talk about what he means on the court on both ends," I said, "Oh my God, it's Andrew! It's Andrew Rogers."
Hey, lots still to come. But up next, we're talking to Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. He's on deck.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World-Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. And that kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going? Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
Top of the hour here on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. Happy to have you with us on this President's Day, and happy to have Sam McKewon on, as we do every Monday. He is the sports editor and Nebraska columnist for the Omaha World-Herald and Husker Extra. Sam, good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good, Sam.
We are
good
feeling
morning.
good on this Monday morning, or at least I think we are.
Yeah, feeling good.
Sam, busy weekend just all around. What got your attention most from this weekend?
Oh, last night. That was a lot of fun for people who were there, including me. I think that was a big win for Nebraska. I thought that one and the Michigan State one were going to be tough, and they were able to pick that one up last night. I think they played really hard down the stretch, and I think the crowd got to Maryland a little bit. It was a great crowd, and so yeah, absolutely, that was the moment that I think was memorable from the weekend, and it's fun to have a team winning some games. That's not something that Nebraska athletics has consistently done in the new year, and so it's a surprise that it's the men's basketball team, and it's a pleasant one.
Hey, Sam, I know. Listen, I don't need to further validate the excellence that you've done at your job, but again, a couple weeks ago, you did say 14 was the number, and I said 14 and 16. That would be amazing. Sam, they're currently 14 and 14 with a few to go. Mm-hmm. They exceed what I thought at the time was lofty, as I do think a lot of our listeners did when you calmly said it. So given that, even you have to be the surprise that they're at 14 with some room to go. I
am. Yeah. I thought they would lose yesterday. I did. I think Maryland's a tough matchup for some of the reasons that materialized during the game. But Nebraska played really well. I mean, they played a great defense in the first half. I think Maryland was a little hesitant or confused. I'm not sure what was going on in the first half of that game, but when they kind of caught, fire, and then they had that run, I'm like, well, this is probably it. This is a game where Nebraska falls, 4 to 6 points short, plays hard but doesn't win. But at the end of the game, Nebraska found a way. They rallied. They made a couple of plays late. Walker got to the hoop, and Maryland settled for a bad shot at the end. I'm not sure why they did, but they did. And then in overtime, once Casey hit that three, I thought it was going to be really hard for Nebraska to lose. And then Sam made that play, and here we go. They have kind of a week off, and now they play Minnesota on Saturday. They should win. Although watch that game. It's not going to be easy as people think. Minnesota's got some talent. And then the big one is Michigan State. And if they win that one, they got a real shot at the NIT. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Sam, from what could have been to what can still be, what do you think has been the biggest motivating force for this group down the stretch of the season?
Casey making threes. This is a team that I think really needed somebody to make some shots. They just needed some good things to happen on offense because they had played so hard on defense, and then they lost their two best defensive players. Casey making threes, I think, has been the difference. He scored 30 against Penn State. When they're down 17 against Wisconsin, he hits 2 threes in a row to get it to 11. And since then, he's been pretty unstoppable. So Maryland did a great job of defending yesterday, by the way. They did a terrific job. That's a great defensive team, and they got a chance to go to the Sweet 16, Maryland does, because they play defense. But, Casey is that's the reason. I mean, and I don't want to diminish anyone else's contribution. Sam Hoiberg's been great. Blaze Keita's been great. But if you're talking about the primary thing, it's him. It's making 3-point shots. It's
how about Derek Walker cutting down on those careless turnovers? Because I think, how about D-Walk kind of cutting down on those careless turnovers? Like, I don't want to undersell the fact he's taken a little bit better care of the basketball these last handful of games too. And I that along with Tomanaga's emergence and kind of basketball IQ, because he's gotten more 2-point field goals, which I think is a testament to how they're training. But Walker's taking better care of the basketball too.
He is. Sam's playing better. Greasel. He's controlling the game more.
Steady Eddie.
Controlling the pace of the game. They're doing a good job of getting him in back down situations where he can either go to the hoop or he can distribute out of that. He's gotten a couple of transition baskets in each game where he beats the other team down the floor for 2 or 4 easy points. Derek's played well. Certainly, Derek is the best player on the team, perhaps by some margin, and he had an incredible game yesterday. So credit to him, and he's been good all season long, and in a very difficult role where he has to not only play post defense against pretty good posts, including the guy yesterday, but he also has to be sort of the offensive initiative. So no question, Derek Walker is the best player on the team. What Casey has been able to do has opened up some of those cutting lanes. So now they can't just leave him out there. They got to go guard him. And the minute they have to go guard him 26 feet out on the floor, he can get behind people. And we've seen that now, and he gets to the rim and he has worked and worked and worked on making those shots, because you don't make those shots by accident. And so he's really good around the rim.
Sam, let me ask you something, because kind of even in passing over the last couple of weeks, we've talked Illinois, we've talked the prowess of Indiana, we've talked about Michigan State has Izzo. You just referenced Maryland as a potential Sweet 16 caliber team. We know about Purdue and their quad 1 wins. I'm on this other little team out there in Evanston. I've kind of said this for about 3 or 4 weeks. Pre the COVID break, I said to Andrew, I said, I think Northwestern is pretty good. I wasn't sure why. I'm still not sure why. I just know they are. What are we missing with Northwestern? Or do you believe?
Well, they've got a... Yeah, I mean, I think...
They're second in the Big Ten. I think they're 20-7.
Yeah. Yeah. They definitely can win a couple of games in the NCAA tournament. I think 1 is probably the appropriate estimate. Well, anytime you got 2 guards who are as good as those 2 guys are...
Adij and Bowie?
You can't... Yeah, and you can't...
Dude, Barry's pretty good, too.
Both of them can score. And both of them can isolate and late in the shot clock and make plays. I think they've got a good chemistry and cohesion. Again, this is going to sound odd, but they don't have to worry about Pete Nance getting his shots.
No, I do. Okay.
Yeah, like it's
so they're so bad.
There's something to be said for paring yourself down to who you need to be, and sometimes you can have too many guys, or you can be too worried about getting somebody going. I think one of the great things about Nebraska's current team is they don't really care who scores. Case they're willing to let Casey do that, but they also don't care. And I think at Northwestern they've got 2 scorers, and the other guys are content to just do whatever the hell they have to do to win, which I think is helpful. Maryland may have 1 too many scores. That may be part of their issue, is they're always trying to figure out who to throw the ball to. Indiana similarly has a definition. I mean, they know who they're going to go, who's getting the ball late in the shot clock, and Trace, Jackson Davis. And so I like teams that have clear definition as to who's going to get the ball and who's going to be counted upon. And I think Northwestern has that. Conversely, the Nebraska women, again, that's a team that probably needs to be driven by 1 player.
Jazz.
And that player is very unselfish. Yeah. And there's times when it would be much better off if they had 1 fewer scorer on the floor and they were just required to rely on her. And if she didn't make a shot, go get a rebound. But I think sometimes they're so, who should get the ball in this position? That in some ways you end up launching up a bunch of shots that don't go in.
This is crazy. A month ago, this was in December, so it was longer than that. Andrew and I debated over whether she would embrace the scorer's role because it's just not in her disposition, even though she can score the basketball. Like, I just don't think that's as easy a button to hit as people think.
Especially if you're not used to it.
And maybe I'm a little biased because I want that in my own house. You know, I want him to score more. It's just not in his temperament. I just don't think it's that easy for her, Sam.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, like I haven't covered the team in depth this year, so I don't want to, you know, overshoot what my analysis is. Obviously, they've lost a bunch of games in a row, and that's concerning to a bunch of people. But I think it's just, and this has kind of been true of a lot of Amy's teams, like they're trying to set up so many different players, it seems like sometimes that, again, you don't necessarily have a clear identity. They want to get the ball in the post. They want to get the ball up the floor. They want to try to score in there. Then they want to try to hit threes outside. Sometimes I feel like they try too hard to get the ball into the post. More screening, more driving would be good. It didn't necessarily have to be Jazz, but I just think it's when you watch that team, Shelley's had some incredible scoring games this year, and they've almost been, well, she hit some threes and she happened to catch a pass and hit a bunch of threes in a row. Like it's not like Caitlin Clark. And Caitlin Clark is a good scorer, but she's not as efficient as people think she is. But what she's really good at is being really consistent at being exactly who she is. And so if she hits a couple of those long threes, then all of a sudden people come out and then she goes and she distributes to her teammates. And so what Iowa's done is they've defined their team as Caitlin's going to go score. She's going to miss some shots, but she's going to make some shots, and then she's going to have 10 assists off of that, and then her teammates are going to complement and supplement that. And that's a good identity for that team to have. When Caitlin goes to the WNBA, she's going to average about 17 points a game. That she's not there. Nobody in the WNBA is going to let her shoot 30 times a game. That's not going to happen. But in college, it's a really good identity for that team to have, even if she's a little bit inefficient, because they understand who they're playing through at all times. And it works for Iowa. And I think there are just times when, you know, what you'd love to see at Nebraska is something very similar with Jazz. That not that she would shoot it 22 times a game, but that they would just say, hey, this is our best player. Everything's going to go through her, and whatever happens off of that is whatever happens. But we're going to have a clear identity when we go out on the floor, and everybody's going to work around that.
Sam, it's funny that you bring up Caitlin Clark in that regard with the WNBA, because DB and I off air just got into that about plus minus and how the WNBA would look a lot different than our college game. But you know, I want to ask you this, because we talk all year long about how Piscataway is the place that basketball teams go to die. When you go to play Rutgers, it's like it's not going to go well. But this past month, you can say the same thing about Pinnacle Bank Arena. And you know what's crazy, too, is you look at a 500 or below Nebraska football team, and you're going to get the support. But you don't always look at a 500 Nebraska basketball team and think that they are just going to pack that place and make it a dangerous place to play. What about like this fan base and this team in coordination with one another is making Pinnacle Bank this place for teams to go to die right now?
They're just dying for a winner.
Well, it's not an easy place to play. It's a pretty well conceived arena, at least from a noise standpoint. There's other things about the arena that are imperfect, but it's very well conceived to watch a basketball game once you get to your seat. And Nebraska fans have always been really supportive and really loyal to that basketball program. People want the team to be very good. They used to be able to get 10,000 fans at Devaney back when it was rough. I mean, Devaney now is pretty darn nice. You go back, 12 years, and it was not nice. It was cobwebs on the doors and all kinds of stuff. So, they've always been supportive of the program. I think there's a lot of basketball fans in the state. There's a lot of baseball fans in the state too. So I think people want to, and then of course, hey, it's the power of a weekend afternoon. It's not Sunday at 6. It's not Monday at 8. It's Saturday last against Wisconsin, and then it was Sunday at 4. We knew there was going to be a big crowd in there because people either had their late lunch or their early dinner, and then they came to town. So it was a lot of fun. It was a good crowd. I haven't been to every Nebraska men's basketball game since No Sit Sunday, but I'd say that was a top 7 crowd since No Sit Sunday, and other people might correct me, but I think that it was up there. And when Matt Rule did the fist pump right before Maryland's final possession of regulation, they put him on this camera, and he apparently knew it was on him, and he kind of came forward with one of these "let's go," and the fans really lost it. I mean, that was the loudest crowd. That was the loudest cheer of the game, and it helped that final possession. I think Jameer Young is a great player, man, he's great. But he got a little disoriented, I think, and so as a result, it was a little bit of an advantage. Yeah, it's a great crowd, and it was a good crowd yesterday. That was a fun one. One of the better crowds I've seen since No Sit Sunday for sure.
Hey Sam, let me ask you something. How do you buoy?
Buoy?
Yeah, how do you buoy? Like when you're covering stories, and sometimes you have intimate knowledge. You've either watched or spent time or talked to people that know, and then you see things covered nationally from an attention standpoint. How do you balance kind of what you know and what you think versus what the perception of the story is, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I'm asking,
yeah, it does.
Like, how do you balance that? Do you just not talk about it as much? Do you get into the fray? Do you say, hey, that's a cool story, but how does Sam McKewon handle the reality versus perception in coverage?
It probably just depends on the story, and so but there are circumstances where the national media will have its own perspective, and that's not necessarily always wrong or completely wrong. I think there's times when, the impression that has been gathered is pretty accurate. I think most of the impression from the Nebraska football era under Scott Frost is, boy, that thing went bad. Yeah, it did. So, there's moments like that. I think sometimes you're going to have some stories where they're going to sensationalize it or hyperbolize it, or they're going to create what we call binaries, right? So this idea that it's either yes or no. It's either 100% this or 0% this. It's either greater than or lesser than, and that's going to sort of define the story. And that, that usually there's a lot more nuance to most stories than that. I could offer, nuances to why Nebraska football struggled under Scott Frost that maybe isn't as simple as, the Golden Boy failed. I would probably add, not everybody felt the same way about Scott when he came back. But most of the people did, but not everybody. And there were weaknesses there when he came in, like all those things that you can do. But you try to be balanced in your approach. And simultaneously, there can be times when you overdo it. When it's the general arc of the story, it probably is more or less what it is, and you can get into all of the details, and you probably end up at the same place as the general conclusion. There could be situations like with elections where people are like, well, let's drill down into this very specific detail in this quadrant of a precinct, and then you zoom back out and you say, well, they won because of this group, because of this, and they won by 9 points, so at the end of the day, a lot of that didn't matter. And it's generally true.
Sam, roster creation and player development, X's and O's, and culture. That's the blueprint of Rule's focus. How would you rank those in terms of importance or priority?
Well, Matt Rule kind of laid them out. The sense I got from him is that culture and player development and roster creation were 1 and 1A, and then the X's and O's were a little bit behind.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Not that schematics aren't important, but that you've got to get good players. Then you have to create a system that develops them. And we got a lot out of the interview with Rule. I'll go more into depth at some point about how he talked about Baylor and Texas and what he thought he needed to do at Baylor in the short time that he was there to have them be competitive with Texas. And the kinds of players they recruited versus the kinds of players that Texas got, and why they thought over the course of 2 or 3 years they could make up the gap. And a lot of that has to do with development, not recruiting. Recruiting is acquisition of talent. Development is improvement. And they've got a system that they think works to develop players, not only their physical skill set, but their ability to perform when it really matters. And I think that's really important to him. Those are the two most important things. And then you have X's and O's, and of course those are great. But I think Nebraska's going to run kind of a pro-style offense that, at times will look really cool, and at times will be frustrating to Husker fans. I don't know if it'll be a full-on pro-style, but they're going to do some stuff, and you're going to be like, why are they doing that? You're not going to think that you're watching Andy Reid.
Hey, Sam, let me get you out of here. This is on the heels of the winter conditioning video and the snow. And listen, full disclosure, this is a former player and a coach and just a general football fan, right? I wouldn't want to be out there. I know that's a tough workout. I also know that there's something to getting acclimated to conditions where your body has to become accustomed to it. Remember, we were the famed teams that couldn't wear sleeves, right? So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the ability to function in the elements and build camaraderie. Why can't we have nice things in the off season though? Right? Like if we know that these videos are coming, is it just human nature to feel compelled to have to comment, or why can't we have nice things?
Well, social media today. I mean, that's what's happened.
I hate always asking
Generally
you
in
the
our
levity
culture.
questions, but sometimes I just need to know that I'm not crazy.
Well, no, it's social media today, and that's what's happened in our culture the last 7 to 8 years. Now it's not entirely bad. Like, I think for the first time in, human history, we have a better sense of how many, many individuals feel, and we never would have known that before because they didn't own a printing press. And so we know some things about people now, and that's okay. And I think what we've learned, and it's tricky to navigate, is the full range of people's thoughts and feelings on a variety of things related to Nebraska football. Matt Rule is actually attuned to those things. He's talked about how sensitive he understands that players are now and the kinds of stuff they have to deal with. And I know there was at least one former Husker that was making a comment about those workouts on Twitter. But I think it was just based on trying to be competitive and trying to have fun. Like, I don't know that they were out there for 2 hours. I think they're just trying to get the heart going and trying to have a little bit of fun and then move on with the day. I think what Nebraska is trying to do is create a competitive culture of kids that know how to that keep track of winning and losing at all times. And that's something that I think Nebraska needs to think about doing because they haven't won very much.
Sam, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. We'll talk again next week.
Take care.
Thanks, Sam.
Hey, more coffee and cream next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. 888-638-4876. If you'd like to get involved in the show, it's Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. DB, over the weekend in the Genesis Invitational, there was a lot of uproar sparked when Tiger Woods handed a female body product to Justin Thomas. And was that Friday? Was that Saturday?
Thursday.
Was it Thursday? Okay, so
Thursday going into Friday.
It was even earlier in the week, and
that's after he outdrove him,
and it really started to make its rounds over the weekend. And
because he apologized after his final, what you thought was going to be the final round on Friday, because it didn't look like he was going to make the cut which you thought was going to be at
Right.
even.
Right.
He slid into the weekend.
So, jokes happen all the time on the golf course. And they joke with each other a lot. And, whether some people thought this joke went too far or not, I didn't really take and maybe it's because I'm a man. I didn't take offense to what he did. And I don't know why a lot of people did. And I'm not trying to sound insensitive. And by all means, chime in if you would like. But why are you, I tell people this all the time. Why are you letting moments that don't really affect you run your life and really get involved and ruin your mood? And because a joke got so-called taken too far. I mean, name a joke that doesn't get taken far nowadays. I mean, if this is the case, if this is how we want to react to certain things that we see, every comedian needs to be canceled. Every single one. Everything is offensive nowadays, and we all tightrope the right and wrong line. If this happened on Impractical Jokers, would people respond the same way?
Yeah, so I mean, listen, there's a lot. I think it's kind of multi-layered. Number one, if the joke isn't, so it's twofold on this initial point. If the joke's not for us, I'm not so sure that if I'm not in that target audience, I'm not so sure people should be seeking my opinion on it. Right? It was the joke about being outdriven and giving a feminine product to another golfer is not something that I could relate to, or I feel like my opinion has value, right? Because it wasn't about me. Like if you told an off-color race joke or a former athlete joke or a dumb Husker joke or something like that, like I feel like I would be a little bit more credible because I'm not the intended target of belittling, right? But I do think, Drew Down, I do think there's too much of that. There's too much I'm offended, right? Because at some point, it's like I told you, and I'll be an equal opportunity offender. It's like I told you about two black quarterbacks in the Super Bowl, right? At some point, they're just two quarterbacks playing. And the less you stop talking about the fact that they're people of color, the easier it will be on those to come after, those that are currently doing. You can just focus on their job. You can acknowledge what it is in the moment without it taking away from their own accomplishments as people, because I think people want to be known as people first. That's really the end game. And so if I'm a female, like if I ask my sister, if I'm like, hey Kim, did that joke offend you? She's going to tell me no. Nope, couldn't care less. As will a few women that I know in my sphere of influence. Like they couldn't care less. But if it's offensive to some, then I think we have to be able to recognize why, in fact, it is offensive. But what I don't think you can have happen, I don't think you can in the same vein want equal this and same view that and treat us the same this, but then at times have these distinct subtle differences that are just unique to your group. I just don't think you can have I don't think you can make the case on the big stage and have it both ways. If you want, I mean, there's a difference between equity and equality, or equity and what I would call the opportunity to, like being treated fairly. Like they're two different things, in my opinion. Sometimes we use them interchangeably. So if I'm in the group that was the butt of the jokes, I hear this all the time. Not all the time. I don't want to exaggerate. There'll be connotation given to either how people talk or how they dress, and they'll equate it to a specific group. Oh, he didn't have his pants pulled up, or he was like, bro this or bro that, right? So, bam, right at that moment, I have to understand okay, is this a shot at me? Is how personal am I taking this? Is there any degree of truth to what they're saying? And am I just mad for the sake of being mad? All those things go through my head, right? There's a reason when you go to golf courses that the tees are different. You have blacks, you have whites, not
Blues,
people.
you have
blues,
yellow,
you have
and you have red.
Yeah, you have tees where you can tee off from. So I get what it was.
The joke was you hit like a girl, right? That's what Tiger was saying, or he was calling him, an expletive word, right? And whatever it is, jokes like that are made in the
I just
world.
don't know if I always want to get in the habit of having to defend.
However, for me, like,
how many things do I say to you off air that I know probably make you uncomfortable, I should say, and I'm like, hey, it's okay, right? Like, I know the things plenty of times.
So I was talking to, like you said, the important people that you talk about, target audience in my life, and it didn't affect them like it affected certain people. And a lot of times we say you hit like a girl, you play ball like a girl, right? That's a famous quote from The Sandlot. Are we really going to say like that needs to be changed?
Now so here's the thing:
was it the action, or was
how
it
can I say this
words?
on the fly? So, what was the analogy that I told you comparing to your brother, right? I said, gosh, your brother seems a little more easygoing, and you said, well, I'm easygoing, and I said, whoa, that's not what I said. I'm comparing the two. I think he's more easygoing. You can be easygoing. I think that's the awkward conversation that people don't want to have when they either compare genders or race or age groups. You're not saying that particular group X can't hit a ball far or hit a ball hard or shoot well. You're comparing it to the next peer group by saying you're not as good as. And if more times than not that sentiment is true, I'm not offended. Do guys on the PGA Tour typically outdrive women on the PGA Tour? Yeah, I'm not offended by that. And I don't think, if you look at it in its context, they are too. They're not saying you can't drive the ball 240 yards.
What does
but listen, hear my heart though. I see where, if there's not a certain level of security, these are hard conversations to have, right? Then it's offensive. But in the same vein, I can use an example that I feel better about. The first black two, the first. See, at some point, even though I give that designation to my dad, I still want people to know that he was a great coach, because he couldn't get hired in he couldn't get hired in a community that he loved to be such a part of. So I just want people to say that he was a great coach. I don't want people to say that he was a great black coach. That doesn't mean that I'm not proud that he's African American, because I'm absolutely proud, because I do know things were different for him. And I do want things recognized. But in the very same vein, as I told you 3 weeks ago, leaving this studio, walking out of the doors, I said, how am I supposed to be mad at Jerry Jones for acting like everybody else did in 1957, and you want to bring it to light in 2023? I'm not mad at Jerry Jones over that. Does that make me less of a black person? No, I understand I understand the context and with what I was dealing with. I'm not mad over that. I'm not mad at Tiger Woods and Justin Thomas. I'm not.
I didn't like how people brought up Tiger's past in a moment this, because it didn't have anything to do with a joke being made.
Well, when you want to make yourself feel good, you try to bring others down to the playing field. I'm not a fan of that either. Those are two things can be true at once. Somebody can be in bad taste and still have overcome moral hills.
Stick around, more to come. It's Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back to the show. It's Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. He's Damon Benning. I'm Andrew Rogers. And DB, the fam showed.
I know.
The fams are here.
I feel like, and I got a hug too.
The
so how
champ
about
is
that?
here.
Did you get a hug? I got
nope.
a hug.
I've gotten plenty of hugs this weekend. I'll get one on the way out.
Even that's competitive, isn't it? All right, I got the right co-host. He can take it and give it out. So my guy on Twitter said, going back to our discussion about Tiger.
Sure.
He says, much ado about nothing. Standard joke for being out hit. I've never seen and he says the tampon thing before, but I have hit. Did you hit with your skirt or putt? Blah, blah, blah. He said the camera had to zoom in to find the controversy. This was a nothing joke between two friends. Tiger is 47 years old. Justin Thomas is 27. But conversely, right, from the female perspective, it was you hit like a girl isn't funny to most anymore because it's implying that females are inferior, etc. Mm-hmm. See, that's the thing. And I don't feel inferior is a word that we've used to be all inclusive, and I don't think it's applicable here. Inferior is, I get the less than negative connotation, but until most, and I'm only using this example, and I'm not trying to perpetuate any sort of masculinity, but until tees are the same at golf courses, until men and women tee off from the same box, you can have this you can't have this conversation. Right? Can I say that and know that until you tee off from the same box, we cannot have this conversation. So it's not so much a tiger in bad, and maybe you do think it's a tiger in bad taste thing with the actual prop, but we got to get over that too, because isn't it interesting? Can I say this? Are we in the tree of trust?
Let's go.
So, and this is the duality of double standards of gender roles, right? So we can't have the conversation that a guy joked about out driving somebody and make it a reference to male female, but guys are afraid to say the word tampon out loud, right? So we can't say tampon is men because, ooh, it makes me uncomfortable, it's taboo. Why can we be empowering for one and not empowering for the other? So in the same vein as you want to be like, hey man, you can't make that comparison. Can you free us up to be comfortable to use the word tampon? Is it a guy problem that we're uncomfortable, that jokes have been made for years about us going to the store to make purchases, but two guys can't have a joke on a golf course? The double standard is what drives me absolutely.
Would it have
bonkers.
been better if he handed her or handed him a purse?
Well,
like something that was bigger and prop that has less of a.
I don't think so. I just think what we're going to be. I just think what we want to be mad about. We're going to be. We're going to be mad about. That's kind of how I.
You bring up a good point though about where the boxes are. The boxes are. They're not.
Well, that's the great equalizer. It takes my opinion out of it.
The boxes aren't 5 yards away. The boxes are 20 yards, 30 yards away sometimes. Maybe even more. Maybe a little bit less on a par 3. But on par 5s, that box is way up there. You get in your golf cart and you drive up to the ladies' tees box.
So, I've got a good buddy. He's in education. High up in education. He happens to be African-American. He says, good point about the Tiger jokes, especially with the clothes thing. I love my sweats and gym shorts. My clothes don't define my intelligence. I can dress nice, but given the choice, I choose comfort over looking what others perceive as professional. I also recognize that certain requirements are expected in different situations. I had an interview at my school for a new position. Even though I'm a blank teacher, I do think I did. Do you think that I showed up for the interview in my sweats that I had on? No, I changed for the interview. That's why I just think context matters, and we're not willing to free the masses up, because I think if you really want real learning to occur, then the exchange of the ideas has to come from both parties. You can't just be talking to me.
Tiger should just know better, though. As in, he's one of the most popular guys in the entire world, in that every single thing that he does on the golf course, outside of being in the locker room, is going to be on film. It's going to be on tape. It's going to be
for me with the know better thing, like is it just because of popularity status that he should know better? Why should he have to censor himself for things that, because he has this popularity status, that
because
he can't
everything
make a joke?
Everything he does is under a microscope.
And I'm completely there. I'm completely there. But whose problem is that? Is that Tiger's problem, or is that the people's problem?
Is this
by trying to focus in on one thing, and just because they know it's going to be lighter fluid on social media, that they're going to put it out there because, now with everything that kind of happened before in Tiger's life, it's easy to pick on him.
Is this a different story if it's Justin and somebody else?
No, I don't think it's as different. Maybe the narrative's a little bit different, but the premise,
it won't get the run.
The premise of
the run.
If John Rahm was in the lead and he did that to Max Homa, later on, it would have gotten the same certain response, because it was the idea behind the gesture. Right, it was people commenting about that gesture
and the secretive of it. I mean, you see him kind of throw it, at the end.
Right? Yeah. It just goes back to not all jokes are going to hit well.
So, but I do think we're kind of bearing a little bit of that lead, though. Do you feel so when I say to you, I say, hey, Drew down. There are things that I won't do out in public that I will do in the confines of my own home because I don't want to be judged differently.
Yeah, sure.
Is that a DB problem?
No.
So I kind of feel like that's what he's saying about Tiger Woods. As I'm listening, right? I think he's saying because it's Tiger Woods, he should know better. Because it's weird though. I'm kind of vibing with you though, because I think at the end of the day, this is what I would tell my kids. This is how I try to live my life. I always want to control the things that I can control. I just had a conversation with Micah the other day about body language. And I said, when you leave things open to interpretation, that's your fault. You have to own the fact that somebody may guess wrong. Are we cool with that? He's like, yeah, I understand. I said, so you have to do a better job of making your intentions unknown. I don't want to run the risk of having to explain to the 200 or 300 or 10,000 people if I'm at a public event and I'm like, let's say I've had way too much to drink, right? And oh man, did you see Damon? He was such and such, such and such. In my head, I was like, oh man, I'd like to be able to enjoy myself in public. But do you know if I was criticized on social media or something like that, do you know what a handful of people would say? Oh, he should know better. He should know better.
Mm-hmm.
So then you get into the argument of what's fair versus what's right. What's right should have been that I should be able to understand that criticism is going to come with what I do, but it isn't fair, right? A lot of people act like that. Right. So I don't know, but sadly I do conform to it, which is why I'm not super
Well, you
visible.
conform to it because you don't want to have to deal with the backlash.
I don't want to answer I just don't want what comes with it.
Because you don't want to deal with the backlash.
Yeah.
That's the problem with censored opinions nowadays. It's just somebody's always going to tell you that your take is incorrect or wrong. And if it has something to do with affecting people's lives over a so-called sports take, if I give a sports take, people can hammer me for my sports take, but that's not going to hit me at my core. But if you're going to start judging my character, if you're going to start judging X, Y, and Z, then it's going to bother you a little bit. So you censor yourself because you don't even want to have to deal with whatever is about to come.
Shane, if Tiger would have been better with his apology, would that have been okay? Because people were hammering him over saying, I'm sorry if I offended anyone. And they're like, well, that's not how you start an apology. And I would argue just the contrary.
I think that's a perfect way.
I would argue just the contrary.
Because he owned his act.
It's relevant to his personality.
Right.
So in that case, it sounded authentic.
That's him.
Because his intent was not to offend. And I'm the guy. I just took this test. I should send it to you. I just took this love language apology test like a month and a half ago. And basically it's a test to let me know how I receive negative stimuli and what makes me feel better about
how it affects you.
I was 87% accountability. So basically, if you do something to me and I'm offended, I want you to be I want you to be accountable. I don't want you to say, hey, this and this happened. It made me do this. This is what I was thinking. Even though all those things could be true, I like for people to just own it and move on.
Do these guys have like a PR guy like waiting for them?
But real time. It's Tiger,
because
right?
it's real time.
Right. Would it have been better if Tiger would have just said it out loud? Could have been like essentially instead of saying like, hey, here you go, subtly, but he screamed it to the masses.
Well, it's not like he unwrapped it out of the box and was like, he wasn't Happy Gilmore in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
He just kind of, it's like track, right? But stick.
Yeah, baton. You passed over the baton.
I don't know.
And you almost wonder if JT kind of knew it was coming because he opened his hand.
Nah, I think when he looked at it, he was like, he dropped it. Right? Wasn't the dropping of it where it got hectic?
Probably.
I don't know.
But you're right. Going back to Shane's point, and we'll wrap this thing up. Everybody has a camera nowadays. You can't get away with anything.
I got to read Hockey Dad's tweet when we come back.
Hey, more coffee and cream next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Top of the hour at 9 a.m. here on the show. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, happy to have you with us. And let's wrap up our thoughts on our previous two segments, and then we will get to Brady Oltmans here in a few moments. Brady is Nebraska football and recruiting reporter for Hail Varsity. Do you want to read your tweet first here, DB, that you teased?
Yeah, Jay Rich, Hockey Dad, said the problem is this is so Jonathan. He said the problem we have is that we have to stop letting a few crybabies ruin it for the other 10,000 that could give two blanks about it. The Tiger story is pretty dumb. On Christine Brennan, she's the only one that seemed to give a damn. TW shouldn't have to apologize for anything. I mean, and I get it, right? There's those strong, polarizing opinions.
There's people on both sides.
But to Shane's point, when you're the PR machine known as Tiger Woods, I think you do have, I hate to say it, but I think you do have to handle your business differently. You just do. It's the whole pressure responsibility thing, right? It's like the burden is greater because of who he is. Now, does it make it right or fair? No. But I didn't think he thought he was going to get that pushback either. But again, at the end of the day, I think it's you cannot debate the point. Until you change the tee boxes, we can't have this conversation.
Let's go to line 1 now and talk to Ty. Ty, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, man. What's going on?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Who am I talking to?
This is Andrew and DB.
This is Damon.
Oh, hey, Damon. Hey, I heard you guys talking about Tiger, and I listen to you guys every morning as I go to work. And you're talking about Tiger. Tiger plays a joke. You know, I grew up in a time when Lee Trevino was the greatest jokester in the world, and never got any flashback. I don't know what your thoughts about that are, if you even know that.
Yeah. I mean, so here's the thing. Let me ask you something, Ty. Should a different time period, since we've kind of grown and evolved a little bit, do different time periods call for different handlings of situations? Or because we did it in the 70s and 80s, we should be cool in 2023?
Nah, I think if it's clean, we can still do it.
Okay. All right.
I would say that.
Yeah.
I would say that. Hey, you can listen to Lee Trevino today.
Yeah. Yeah, he's pretty.
People.
I think it's a combination of both.
He's pretty old school,
I
appreciate
agree
the
with
call,
Ty's
Ty.
call there. Thanks, Ty. I agree with him when he says if it's clean, go for it. But there's a reason why certain things in history aren't being done today, or we follow along into today.
In our many sports shows that we have, remember the whole television stretch we went through. If this show could be on television, I think we agreed that you couldn't even have a show like Friends on television in 2023. And that wasn't that long ago. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's an us problem. Maybe it's a combination of somewhere between where Ty is with it and where Jay Rich is, where because I don't think Jonathan's being a caveman either, but I do think that the double standard thing, sometimes it's good when we want to debate the point, but then when we separate the two, it's hey, we want to be equal and treat us the same. So I think at some point, that's just my narrative for the whole black quarterback thing. At some point, I just want to be a quarterback, right? And the more that I can just be a quarterback, the more you're going to give me opportunities, and I won't have to have the Lamar Jackson draft report, right? I don't have to have the discussion of whether Lamar Jackson should get a long-term deal. Because do you know deep down what we still talk about? In the back of our minds, we still refer Lamar Jackson is still a black quarterback. If he was Josh Allen and he threw the ball the way that he did, we don't compare Josh Allen's athleticism to Lamar Jackson's, even though size-wise, they're very comparable. So until we get over that stigma, even if it's in our subconscious, we can't have real conversations.
All right, let's move tampon over to Brady Oltmans.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
Sorry, we're just.
I wasn't going to laugh out loud.
Let's have a little
smile. It was an internal deal.
Let's have a little smile. Come on.
Put us like the Joker.
Yeah, let's put a smile.
I almost said Heath Ledger, but even that's not that. That's kind of morbid.
Hey, let's move on, though, really, and let's talk to Brady Oltmans. He is a Nebraska football and recruiting reporter for Hail Varsity. He's on with us via stream right now. Brady, first time talking to you, and happy to have you on as a weekly regular now. Good morning.
Morning, guys. How's everything going?
Who's made it more to the big time? Is it us having you, or you taking time out of your morning for us? I gave you both options that center around you. How about that? We appreciate it.
I think it's us putting arms around each other and helping us up the hill, you know?
There it is.
Something like that.
I like
right?
that.
Yeah, Brady, let's start here because I know being a guy that's been heavily invested in this football program from the start. Who are you most excited to see all padded up come spring in this new age of Matt Rule?
I think the immediate answer for me, and I don't know in what capacity, how full tilt he'll be in the spring, but it's Thomas Fidone. A guy with a lot of promise, a guy that's in probably, from everything I've seen and from what I've been told, the best shape of his life this spring. But coming off of those knee injuries, I don't know if they're going to have him go full tilt, because it being spring, you kind of want to keep some tread off the tires in that case. But also you kind of want to know that he's built for it and ready to go in this new regime. And tight end is a position that it's a position of need. Somebody needs to step up. And it's one that I think in Marcus Satterfield's offense, they utilize a little bit more than Matt Rule typically has at Temple and Baylor. So I think he's the one. He's the first one that comes to my mind when I think of who needs to make a big spring.
So if you're looking at Nebraska's, let's just stay right with tight end, because it kills a couple of birds with one stone with your kind of what you do in covering recruiting. When you take a look at Nebraska's scholarship distribution chart, and I'm not sure what we're going to get from Chris Hickman. So the time being, I'll leave him out. But you got Smith Flores, you got Androff, you got Tagaloa, you got Carney, Fidone, Rollins, Gilbert. The room kind of got full in the offseason, but how do you pit that against the prowess of Carter Nelson, the national recruiting scope? You have to go back and still be able to watch tape and pit it against the offers. And whatever side you come out on of that, you still have the top-ranked player in the state. Does that matter for you in terms of how you look at Nebraska's tight end room based on what could potentially be down the pipeline?
It's interesting to think about, because I think he's an incredible athlete, and you really don't want to kind of stockpile guys, and backload them, because I think that is an easy way to get them to go in the transfer portal. Hypothetically, you got star guys sitting on the bench, but I think it's worth noting that with this Matt Rule coaching staff and what they like to do, and they've said before, is getting good athletes in. They're not going to ever shy away and not get an athlete, and that's what Carter Nelson is. I mean, he can throw it decently enough. He can run it real hard. He can hit real hard, and he can catch, and he can block. I mean, he can really do it all. In that 8-man, you have to. So I think that he's a guy that you can bring in. And if he's a D1 big time Big Ten tight end, you can have him there, or you can move him over to edge. You can move him over wherever he fits best and wherever this coaching staff can see him fitting best. And if he's good enough for Notre Dame to fly in and look at him, and then when Tommy Rees gets the job at Alabama, he calls up Nick Saban, and Nick Saban's looking at Ainsworth tape and offering him a scholarship, then I think that he's the kind of guy, regardless of what your scholarship chart looks like, you can't let him leave the state borders, really.
Rule doesn't talk about individual players all too much just yet, unless he's asked. But one he really likes on the offensive side of the ball is Gabe Ervin. And, that running back room is heavily populated. And based off last season, thoughts would probably be Anthony Grant and then Ramir Johnson and all the way down the list. But then when you hear the name Gabe Ervin, you're like, oh, that guy that was a true freshman that started is, beginning to resurface in conversation. The way that Rule talks about this running back in particular, what do you expect his role to look like next season?
Pure competition right off the bat. I mean, Matt Rule and running backs coach EJ Barthel they are relentless in looking at film. I mean, EJ, even in his introductory presser, was, citing Emmett Johnson, and he didn't really play that much in the fall, but he was talking about spring tape. And now that you get a couple weeks removed from that, they're able to look at a little bit more game tape or a little bit more practice tape. And I can tell you, they're poring over that tape and really looking at the finite, little details of everything. And running back is a position that they pay a lot of attention to. Mm-hmm. Anthony Grant's a guy he's going to jump off the page real quick because of what he did. I mean, shoot, you got a guy that almost eclipsed 1,000 yards, and he was held under 40 yards rushing in 4 games last year. That's a beast. But Emmett Johnson stands out. You've got A.J. Allen is great. Gabe Ervin Jr. is a guy that has a high ceiling. It's really going to be about competition and pushing each other. And I don't know, maybe one enters the portal if he thinks he can get a starting job in the fall, after spring ball, maybe not. But it's that competition's built for long-term success and development. And I think that that's what they're hoping for. And maybe Gabe gets a couple more carries in the fall in order to ensure that he sees his vision in Nebraska football and sticks around. But I think he's a guy that the coaching staff really believes in and has a high ceiling for.
Brady, let me ask you something in terms of expectation level. So maybe not the most talented. What position group for you has the most upside relative to the performance from a year ago?
Well, that's a tough one because my immediate thought was linebacker, but between us, I thought linebackers played pretty well last year.
They had a good stretch the back half of the season. I would agree.
I think the one that pops out to me right now is edge rusher. That's not to say, Garrett Nelson, Caleb Tanner, and those guys didn't play well last year, but in Tony White's aggressive 3-3-5 and what he likes to do, it's all about creating matchups and moving guys around. And they've got really good athletes at outside linebacker or edge. They'll probably mix and match them in the spring to see, what fits best. But you've got guys that are if they see a weak tackler, a guy that they have an athletic advantage of, they'll attack it and go after it. But on the opposite side, you'll have, an inside linebacker and that opposite outside linebacker mesh and move into a strong side or something to create mix matches in order to, compound at the line of scrimmage. And I think you have to have great edge rushers to do that. And Nebraska's got dynamic game ball hawk, aggressive, tough edge rushers now that are extremely athletic and able to, to keep the edge too. So I think that's a position that I'm really excited about and curious about to see, because that could really be the kind of, page turning position for this defense.
What's interesting that you bring that up, and I know there's a lot of MJ Sherman buzz and things like that, but two guys in particular, one Coach Rule brought up in Blaze Gunnarsson. You got Maverick Noonan in the fold, who I think is a guy you also don't have to babysit. I don't know if he's ready this year, but the other guy opposite, I'm a big Jamari Butler guy. And for whatever the reason, Brady, he flies under the radar, but I'm telling you, he's way good.
Yeah. Yeah. And he got good special team snaps last year. And I know that this coaching staff loves a guy who will step up and volunteer on special teams. I think Jamari's a guy who entered the portal very briefly, but I think once they announced Tony White, and once he saw, okay, I'm going to do what in this defense, he kind of thought, maybe Nebraska is the place for me. And I think he's bought into it. I think I'm still curious to see who exactly coaches the edges. Last thing I knew, they still hadn't really decided if that's going to be, Dvorak's linebackers group, or if Terrence Knighton is going to take over that edge rushing position, or if he's going to stick strictly to interior defensive line. But I mean, he's a guy he's just as athletic as you need him to be. He's got a motor to him. You'd want to see him a little bit more like starter style, big time snap experience to really, before you're, singing the gospel for him. But he's a guy I think who could definitely step up and become that next big edge rusher for Nebraska.
Brady, we talk a lot about chemistry and culture whenever it comes to surrounding teams, not just Nebraska football and what they've been having to go through, but even with Nebraska baseball coming into the season, this kind of whatever it takes mentality. And we all know that, Matt Rule, he understands that, being the pinnacle program over at Nebraska, it's that rising tide lifts all boats, right? If one group does it, let's have everybody do it in the athletic department. And I know Drake's our baseball guy, and we can talk to him more about Husker baseball, but you have good variety too. You can kind of pluck your different points of Nebraska and sports that they offer. But based on what you've seen just across the board from all the programs and the emphasis on chemistry and culture, how has that kind of been a driving influence for all Nebraska teams?
Well, it's interesting because I think that's something that Trev believes in strongly. And it's something that now in his time as athletic director, he's able to, he wants it to feel really communal. I mean, it's not only separated by team, but it is an entire, athletics family. You see that with Matt Rule and his coaching staff and players going to gymnastics meets, wrestling meets, going all over. And I know Matt Rule he said that like playing in the pros, you don't have these other sports to go to. And then you even think about the men's basketball team and the struggles that they had, and now they're banding together. And like Fred Hoiberg said, it's not about what could have been, it's what can still be, making the most of the situation you have. with Will Bolton, this Husker baseball team. I mean, San Diego's tough. That's perennially a pretty good team, but you're not hitting that well with guys on and runners in scoring position. It's change approaches at the plate. Just doing little tweaks and things to, especially a younger lineup and a team that's having to rely upon more on younger guys, at least to start the season. I mean, those are things you can tweak, and those are things that along the season, not only with coaching, but as you blend guys together and get that camaraderie and you get that sort of fellowship on each individual team, and then within the athletic department. I mean, those are the things that kind of tend to work themselves out.
Brady, when you're looking at it, it's interesting, kind of that perspective in the whole communal thing. When you look at whether it's volleyball or wrestling or softball or women's basketball, men's basketball, whatever, what do you think is, and I know football is the easy answer, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. What do you think's the in this last current sports cycle, who will be the biggest victim of preseason perception versus reality of the season? As you give me the right smile.
This might be kind of a weird kind of cop out, because I like to cover them in the fall too. But the women's soccer team, I mean, that women's soccer team, I mean, they were picked to finish, among the last group of the conference. I mean, they were almost cellar dwellers preseason because they had lost so much, and they were mostly sophomores playing. But they finished probably one win away from the NCAA tournament this last year, and they pushed Michigan State in that Big Ten semifinal over in Columbus. And John Walker did a great job with those, with all of those players, and with the support staff around them that just said, don't let the outside forces dictate what you are. This is your team. You define your season, and you define what you're going to be. And I think he mentioned that to them after they played at St. Louis and they had that big loss. And at the time, St. Louis was the top 20 team, and Nebraska comes back and they fight NC State, they fight USC, and then they have that strong stretch over the Big Ten season. I think that's the one that jumps out to me when you think of like preseason conception and expectations, and then the team just ends up surpassing them in the end.
Brady, you're the man, dude. We appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much, and we will talk again next week.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Brady.
That is Brady Oltmans, Nebraska football recruiting reporter for Hail Varsity.
I'll always take the Nebraska soccer reference.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm a big John Walker fan.
Well, it just shows, like I said, it shows kind of his spread. He is a real charcuterie board when it comes to covering Nebraska, because he got into women's soccer. We obviously got deep into football, and he can talk baseball, which is what I want to do right now before we break this thing off, because with Nebraska, and after talking to Will Bolt, what was it, last week, 2 weeks ago?
Tuesday.
So last
Tuesday
week,
or Wednesday,
we talked to Will Bolt, and, the numbers were always something that stuck out to me. The turnover rate, like, why is it that, there's so much addition, and there's not really a solid so-called foundation. But in a way, now I'm starting to really understand where they're going with their path, especially when it comes to rotation, when you're trying to find like the right guy for the role. I mean, we saw Kaminska go out. He probably had the best performance out of any Husker pitcher over the weekend. Olsen had a close second, and then you had Caleb Clark, who struggled. But again, I don't want to look too deep into, hey, it's the first game of the season, especially for all of these guys. Who are they? But it does say something about this Huskers team, and what they weren't able to do this weekend. Bolt wants resiliency. He wants a strong culture. He wants to, stay connected in all forms, and they just weren't able to do that, and it especially showed on Sunday.
Well, I think when you're taking a look at what Nebraska's got to do, I think the lack of the offensive punch, you thought you were going to snap out of it on yesterday, because I think they scored in the first 4 innings and you get the big lead, and you mentioned Clarkey in terms of what happened to him on the bump. But I think 6 runs in the first 2 games left Nebraska feeling a little uneasy, because you didn't want the ghost of yesteryear to start to creep up in their inability to hit with guys in scoring position. Like, oh boy, here we go again. But it's so early, and it's baseball. And so you don't really want to kind of lock those guys into that in terms of how they're going to play, and they tried to shuffle the lineup a little bit yesterday, especially in the bottom third. But I think they've got to find a way to not fall into that rut with guys in scoring position this early in the season, because I don't think it would take much for them to fall into checking the rearview mirror, even though they have had quite a bit of roster turnover. Hitting with guys in scoring position last year was a bugaboo for them too.
It was. It absolutely was. And how about the impact of the freshman right away, who's currently leading the team in average and a lot of hitting categories across the board, Dylan Carey.
Yeah.
And, something I think about a lot whenever you make that transition from high school to college is, will it work right away? And
I think him
for
hitting
him,
in the bottom third of that lineup, I think is a good place for him.
Yeah,
right
but he
now.
looked comfortable
he
at
does.
the plate, right?
Yeah, sweet swinging. Yeah, today will be big.
It'll be a big game. And, 4-game series against San Diego, who Brady did say is a very good team. Aside from that, you look at what Creighton did, and I know we kind of touched on a lot of these things at the start of the show, but we wanted to make sure we could hit on baseball because there was so much other stuff that was going on. We didn't even hit on Creighton basketball today, but there is something I want to bring up with you tomorrow about that, because I think you'll find it pretty
Jays?
Yeah, with the Jays. I think you'll find it pretty interesting as we prep for the Marquette game.
Biggest game of the season.
Right.
For them. I don't think that's hyperbole. And and after they win it tomorrow night, it'll put them squarely in position to be on that 4 line to start the tournament in March, because that is my prediction sure to go wrong, is that they will be a 4 line, a 4 seed as they head in to the March big tournament.
But with Creighton in particular, I think something that we knew going into this season was pitching. And
are you talking about baseball?
Baseball, yeah. I'm sorry.
Marquette, the Marquette thing screwed me.
Right, yeah. So I got off the beaten path. We're back on the road, DB. We're back.
Well, you just said Marquette.
We're driving. You're in the passenger seat. I'm apparently in England, but we're driving. And based on talking to Service last week, pitching seemed to work again for this Creighton team. I think that's going to be their bread and butter this year.
And McNeese, those 2 out of 3. They're the only local team of the 3 that got in the win column. Right. So good on them.
And I'm sure Omaha wants to forget.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, tough stretch. You want to grab
quickly
Cody?
here? Let's hit Cody
before we
we're
get
talking
to Nick.
wrestling next. So Cody, welcome in.
We got to go to break. Cody, we're good.
There's no way.
There's no way. How do you know?
We're gonna
there's a will, there's a way.
We're going to run out of time for Nebraska, Cody.
There's no way, because you took 7 seconds to try to hit that button.
We'll share the segment maybe with Nick Rubek, who's coming up next.
Let's do it. So Cody was at State Championship Wrestling all weekend. So was Nick. We will talk to both of them next about all of the events, all the winners, all the controversy. That's coming your way. Stick around. Wait, that's at 9:45. We still have a segment in between. Yeah. So wait for that.
Go ahead, Cody.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Speaking of coffee and cream, I am drinking the official coffee of Coffee and Cream, courtesy of the Beanery. One of my favorite places to go check out, and we do it once a week, at least under my roof. That's what we do, especially after church in the morning. It's like, hey, you know, what are we going to do?
Had
food,
the apple
maybe?
smoothie yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Caleb had the berry. Actually, he had to split it with Zoe.
How are the smoothies there?
It was fantastic. The apple was real apple. Yeah, it's legit.
Opposed to your green apple Jolly Ranchers?
No, you know, sometimes apple fools you. You know, it's like, and it was green too. So I had a certain, you ever look at something and because it looks a certain way and you expect it to taste a certain way. See, I want it. Once I saw green, I'm like, this better be apple.
They're locally owned and operated. They roast their own coffee, make their own smoothies, apparently, and now they need to change their slogan to serving people coffee and smoothies. Because that's what DB likes to get over at the Beanery. We appreciate them being the official coffee of Coffee and Cream. Let's go to the phone. Cody is on line one here to talk state wrestling. Cody, what's up, man?
What's going on, guys? How are you?
Commander Cody, that was a fantastic job by your organization covering the state tournament, man. That was
any wrestle killed it.
Golly. You know what my favorite was? I love the little blurbs of the match highlights with the results. Like that was fantastic.
Yeah, there was so much action going on this weekend. And start off with Andrew. It was nice to meet you Thursday.
Yeah, great Montana hat.
Oh, thank you. Always got to represent the groove. Damon, do you know Eric Vargas, Westside graduate, coaches wrestling down at Central Missouri?
Yes, I know of him.
How much? Oh, I said, how much does Andrew look like him?
Hey,
I thought that's what.
Yeah, you know what? You're right.
Name for me again
Vargas.
one more time.
Central Missouri State Wrestling.
Eric Vargas.
Yep.
Yep. It's
here we
kind of a doppelganger. So best.
I know he's a good-looking dude.
Of course.
What?
That's that irrational sense of confidence. Hey, Cody. So what was?
Yeah.
Did you get caught up in the moment of Kale's match? Was that the greatest high school wrestling match that you thought you'd seen?
It's up there. I mean, off the top of my head right now, I'd have to go back and look. I know no one talked. The Haberman Genitone match in the finals last year
Was outstanding.
Yeah. Kale's match. I mean, Henry Riley and Mikey Myers had a heck of a match this weekend.
I'm pretty proud of Eminem.
Yeah, but I mean, Kale's match was absolutely incredible. I think the hardest part that people don't realize is how close Kale and John are. John lives with Kale in the summer to train with him. The O'Neill kid, John Alden.
That's how I felt about Barber losing 2-1 in the, because they're really good friends too. That was hard, that was a hard match for me to watch for her.
Yeah, and so I mean, you have that aspect of it, and you have Kale's incredible wrestler, but so is John. I mean, it's not like this kid came out of left field. John Alden was a finalist last year. He's an incredible wrestler, and they just put on a high-level wrestling match. So I thought it was good. I'm not going to go into any details about some of the outside stuff of that match. But
it was a very it's a very explosive weekend for parents and coaches.
Yeah, and Omaha World-Herald writers.
So, Cody, are you? And we didn't get into that. We were going to. Do you make a distinction with individual sports? Because I thought it was weird that the analogies were made to team sports. And I know wrestling's a team sport. I get it, right? You're there as a team.
No, I know what you're saying. So I've never, if Ron Higdon says something, that's like the Bible. I mean, that guy knows more and does more for NSA than any person I've ever been around. So if he doesn't want that happening, I get it. Now the wrestling, fan side of me, I love that stuff. I know that was targeted towards some certain celebration in 2022 that went completely overboard. But I mean, some of my favorite highlights of when I was in high school. I mean, you remember Sim Bribiaseka?
No.
From Boys Town, wrestled at UNO.
I don't actually.
He was doing backflips. He was doing backflips off the top of the podium. I mean, you remember Jesus Maganda did that little side flip when he won it for Skyler.
I think Alex Bridgeford got one in.
Yeah, so I love to see it, but I'll never question something that Higdon says. So, I think that certain people should, if they don't follow the sport, should not talk about it.
So that's really what this boils down to, right? Because Stu was getting it online, and is that the reason?
Oh, he still is today.
Is that the main reason?
By national pundits now.
Interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
Cody,
USA Wrestling. Yeah, what's up, Avery?
Oh, I was just gonna say, appreciate the call.
Yeah.
Hey,
right, guys,
stick around. We're gonna get Nick next.
Yep. More wrestling to talk about then. I want to do something interesting.
Are you out on the backflips?
Fun. No. And we can talk about that a little bit more tomorrow in detail. Because I don't have a lot to say about it, but I think it's a younger generation thing more than it is an older generation thing.
I know one thing. It's a lot going on with wrestling. That was an electric, lot of testosterone going on in that one.
Oh yeah. Okay, let's change gears here. Let's do something fun. I want to call my dad up here real fast. So my dad's going to sit in the chair right here, and we're going to play a game.
Oh, boy.
Look at this. He's already questioning why he showed up this morning.
You're just full of surprises, aren't you?
And Dad, go ahead, put on the headset. This is Barry Rogers, and he is the
WW.
he is the B in WWBD. Hey, Dad.
How are you?
You a little nervous? You a little
Come
nervous?
on. Like I'd be nervous to talk about something.
Oh, okay. Well, you don't have to do much talking because
Okay,
I'm gonna
good.
have DB try to do some WWBDs for us. So I'm gonna
Okay.
give you some prompts here, DB, and you
Okay.
have to guess which one Barry would do.
Gotcha.
Okay. So let's
How's this mic, Shane?
yeah,
Is he
how
pretty
are we
good?
doing, Shane? You want me to turn the cam? All right, go ahead. Shane's got us to turn the cam.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
There we go. All right, WWBD.
What
This
would
is
Barry
really
do?
easy.
Is this my good side?
Yep, great side. Yep. Pay a handyman or do it himself. What would Barry do?
WWBD. He'd pay a handyman.
Well, it depends on what it is, but most of the time it'd be paying.
Hey, all right.
If I did it myself first, I would go to the hardware store, spend a lot of money, not do it right, and then have
pay a
to pay the
handyman.
handyman. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Let's go. Let's go.
WWBD.
Okay.
Travel by plane or travel by car?
Very family oriented. Time spent. I would think car, but he does appear to like efficiency. I will go with. He's gonna drive. Let's take the car.
See, this is another one of those. It depends because if it's like 5 hours or less, I'm driving.
Yeah.
Because by the time I get to the airport and do all that stuff, get
There's
through
the
TSA, all
efficiency.
that stuff. That's the efficiency. You're exactly right. But no doubt, fly on an airplane.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would
Sorry.
think. I would think fly.
Yeah.
All right, I'm 1 for 2. That's all right. I got this.
WWBD. Change his own tire or call AAA?
That's something I feel like he would know how to do. I'm gonna go with change his own tire.
No way. I pay for AAA insurance.
You're gonna use
it.
Shoot! All right, I gotta get back on the good side here.
You're doing so well.
1 out of 3. Here
All
I
right,
come. I'm
all
gonna get back.
DB. WWBD.
Okay.
Would he move north or move south?
Oh, tough. I'm gonna go with move south.
Well, if you know me, one of my favorite statements in the wintertime is I hate cold weather. So you're exactly right. Yeah. I'm
He
not
would
moving
move
in.
south.
Let's go. Let's
He
go.
would move
Two out of
south.
4. Here
Yeah,
we
you're
go.
doing okay. You're doing okay. WWBD. Would he rather putz around in the garage or read a book?
Appears to be a bright guy. I'm gonna go with reading a book.
Putts in the garage.
Fudge! Look, Ash is killing me.
All right, let's do one more.
All right, I'm just trying to get back to 500.
WWBD, just like Nebraska basketball here. Here we go. Drive the boat or relax in the water?
You kind of describe him as having control freak tendencies, but he appears to be
Wait a
fairly
minute.
fairly laid back. Relax.
See, if I'm on the boat, I'm driving the boat. Yeah. Because you're exactly right, DB. I am a control freak when it comes to that, and nobody can drive the boat like I can. So
That's where you get your irrational confidence from, right?
Thanks, Dad. Love you. Thanks for playing. We are talking wrestling next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds.
Lordson's in good position here, but Alden postures up. Lordson doing a great job there. He's going to secure the title.
He got it.
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Lordson's in good position here, but Alden postures up. Lordson doing a great job there. He's going to secure the title.
He got it. What a finish. Wow, Cale Lawrenson, a 4-time state champion in a remarkable finish.
In Nebraska high school wrestling history, to become the 4-time state champion.
Yeah, that is Larry Pudney blown away by what was going on. The wow and a great finish. You're looking for a great finish on a vehicle. How about Dingman's? Really good at what they do. The customer service is the thing that I'm most impressed with. Busy time going out there with people in the service industry. You're looking for a peace of mind and know that people have your best interests at heart. Make sure you go to Dingman's. 25 years locally owned and operated. You don't do something as long as they have in the community without being pretty good at what they do. That is Dingman's. 4 great locations. The Collision Center, they can work on just about anything. I saw walk-ins for a car that was overheating, and I saw somebody that actually needed a fender bender. So their versatility, much like Lordson's wrestling game, has got a ton of options.
How unbelievable. On both fronts, car front and over at the CHI over the weekend, which is funny because when I made my little tripping hazard video that I sent to you, I was at CHI.
Yeah, what was going on with you
like
jumping
that
over?
Magic trick, like hiding from Molly.
What was the dog doing? Were you playing tag? Because when you just
So they
jumped over the couch,
do
I
like
was
those magic tricks where you like throw the blanket in the air and then you disappear, and the dog's like, "Where did you go?" So I ran around, and then I tried to hide on the couch because she hardly.
You
ever
just
looked.
went airborne.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then I tripped over somebody's slipper that's sitting in front of me, and then my caring and observant father goes and checks my location when my brother's coming into town and goes, is he at the hospital? Because I'm at CHI.
I was like,
and he thought I was at the hospital from my little accident.
You flew over the couch.
I did. Yeah, it did not look graceful either.
It's all right. I just like the fact the dog was losing her mind.
She loves it. She loves playing tag.
Losing her mind. Shane, is Nick coming in on the stream?
He's right here. We got him right now. Nick Rubek, wrestling writer for the Omaha World-Herald. Nick, good morning, man.
Morning, fellas. How are you?
Good, man. Few people do this as well as you do. Is this like your Super Bowl? Because it's like
I know, man. It's become a spectacle, hasn't it? It really has, in a good way.
A 4-day Super Bowl.
So, Nick, let me ask you something right out of the gates, because I'm kind of blown away by this, and I know we were just joking with the WWBD with Andrew's dad. What would Barry do? But I always think about my dad during this time, like especially as I'm watching the evolution of wrestling, and you've covered this deal. And you get the long, lanky, explosive guys like Ziola. You get the compact guys. You get the guys with like no bones. You're getting the great advancement in the women's game. What's your level of surprise that the athleticism and explosiveness is what it is in 2023 compared to when we first started covering the sport?
Yeah, it's a great point. And one I actually hadn't taken a ton of time this weekend to think about, but I think now that you say it, I think like a lot of things, that's kind of a trickle down from the college game. You get those guys that flexibility is almost as important as their strength, at the college game. And when that starts trickling down, and that's one of the awesome things about wrestling is that you can do it any different way. I mean, one of the things I point to is that girls 200 bracket where McKenna Schramm is probably no joke, a foot shorter than Claire Pash.
Yep.
And uses her leverage. And if you just looked at those two side by side, you might be like, oh yeah, the girl with the foot height advantage is probably the one that's won all these matches, and she actually hasn't. So I think that's a really great point, though, Damon, that the athleticism is becoming more important than just brute force.
I think it was the quarters. I'll go back to using Ziola again because he's long and he's lean and I think he ended up winning his double digits. I think it was 15-5, something 14-5, something like that. Yeah, and so you got that long. He gives up his leg. He tried to get a single. And I'm watching it in consecutive moves. He went from the splits where he had kind of his shoelace in front of his face, avoiding the potential for the double. Then it goes to the mat, and he's like, it looked like a chicken wing, how you would fold a wing. And I'm just thinking to myself, the body and that kind of frame historically would be in trouble. He fought it off, no problem, with his balance and flexibility. I'm like, it's like contortion. It's just so strange to see people so explosive from awkward body positions.
And that's one of the things that, when I talk to the coaches of these high end guys, the Joel Adams, the Cale Lurids, and that kind of stuff all just comes with mat miles. I mean, I've been in this position 400 times before, and I know what to do. I don't panic when I'm at a disadvantage. I know what I can do to put this back in my side. So, and Ziola is 100% in that category. I mean, to be truthful, there might not be a guy at the state tournament that had more off-season matches than he. I mean, that guy, he's
travel. Yeah, he's a stud.
Getting all those. So that it sounds simple to call it experience, but in reality, a lot of that is experience, just putting themselves in those positions so many times and really knowing how to get out of them.
Nick, the growth of wrestling across the state is amazing, not just with athletes, but fans. I mean, wrestling fans brought the energy at
man.
CHI over the weekend. What do you make of the sellout crowds on Friday and Saturday? Do you give it a bow or a backflip?
Childish.
I'm gonna bow. I'm gonna give a bow on that one. No, I think wrestling fans definitely deserve credit. They show up and they root, man. Friday night is, for my money, the best night on the high school calendar. I mean, there's just so much juice and so much emotion. You know, there's a reason they call that the heartbreak round.
Mm-hmm.
You got guys in the middle that are either realizing a dream to wrestle in the finals, or they're disappointed that they're not. And then you got guys on the outside that are either getting a medal or they're not getting a medal. And, you know, you put all that emotion with 5 different classes from every corner of this state, and it's palpable, man. You can feel that in there.
So a lot of positives, I think, for businesses pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, you know, whether it's office space or how to work from home, efficiency. Mm-hmm. Apparently for NSAA and wrestling, it was how to schedule classes. Are you one of those? Are you kind of old school in terms of everybody in the same building? Do you on the same days, same times? Do you want girls to have separate times from the boys? Like, how are you kind of looking at the format if you're going to tweak something that's already really good?
Sure. To be quite honest, and you know, Nebraska's lucky. Nebraska might have the best guy in charge of wrestling in the entire country, in Ron Higdon. So I certainly won't speak for what he is going to do. For my money, I would do this exact same thing for one more year, and I would evaluate where we're at in November, see where our numbers go. The problem is I don't foresee it becoming a 4-day tournament at CHI. For a number of reasons, then it becomes a matter of, you know, where do you put the girls tournament? Well, you're not going to put it at Baxter when men's basketball, women's basketball, and hockey all have days on the calendar. Do you put it at Ralston? Probably not. And then do you put it at Grand Island? And my question the thing I keep bringing up is, at that point, are you kind of making that a second-rate tournament? You know, and the proponents for another class of girls wrestling, I understand everything they're saying and wanting to do with it, but if that's the answer, are they still as excited for a second class if they're wrestling in Grand Island or in Kearney instead of at CHI?
You know, quickly here, I want to just mention the Cale Lordson battle. You know, as he gets the 4-beat at the expense of a John Alden quick start, followed by a takeaway 2, a scramble between the two, and then Lordson gets the 2 points without taking anything away from Cale in this moment. How do you make sense of officiating in a moment like that, and the professionalism by O'Neill to handle the frustration afterward?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I came home Saturday night, so I didn't get a chance to. I was not writing the Cale story Saturday, so I was kind of off doing my own thing. But I stood in the tunnel with a number of coaches and actually Cale's younger brother Kyler watching the whole thing. I told a couple of coaches, my mouth is dry, and I am not going to win or lose anything today. Mm-hmm. Just unbelievable match. And then I came home, and I probably am going to out myself as a nerd here, but I probably watched that sequence.
Oh, you're not alone.
Yeah, not.
Listen, I talked about it in the first period. It's in my library. It's not going anywhere.
No, and I bet I watched it 75 times, and I watched every piece of it. I watched the officials in the background to see if they made movements, if they thought something was up. You know, tough situation, really, really tough situation. If you watch it in real time, it looks like, kid moved early. If you watch it in the slow-mo, they look like they moved together. You know, that it's such a tough call, and it's a judgment call. I think the one piece of criticism I have for it is that somebody watching it straight on deferred to somebody that was watching it from behind.
Yep.
And that would be the only piece of criticism I would have for it.
Spot on.
But those you hit the nail on the head, Andrew. Those O'Neill coaches were absolutely incredible. Brian Corkle, I talked to him for probably 30 minutes yesterday, and just a great dude.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the thing that stuck out to me is he said, you know, I don't want to stir any pots. I'm not trying to muddy waters. I love wrestling. Cale deserves everything that he's gotten. His overwhelming takeaway was just how proud he was of his kid, which is absolutely the truth.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not going to let you guys get off the hook. What did you think about it?
I'm with you. I think you're spot on. The vantage point mattered
point for me.
And you know, I watched it last night again. Real time, it looked a little more bang bang than so I get it.
Yeah, and I also know officiating's hard. And you know, in those moments, you try not
especially
to
now,
try not
Nick.
to let that moment supersede anything else. And it's difficult to try to get things right, but also keep things fair and also keep things magical. And you know, it's a hard task.
I watched a 280-pounder knee drag for a scoop takedown in about the blink of an eye. Like I'd never. You just don't see guys like Tyson Terry do that at this age, at that size. Like it's changed dramatically.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. And I asked Chuck Mulligan, who does the awesome podcast with Mike. I asked him Friday night. I said, Chuck, what are the two things that make Tyson Terry better than everybody? Because Tyson Terry doesn't go onto the mat and physically scare anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, the kid from Central is bigger than him.
Yeah.
Well, if you get on the mat with him, let me know because I'm there. But he does, and Chuck had a great answer. He said, you know, it's number one, confidence. He's done it a million times. He's got those tools in the toolkit. And then number two is it's mental. You know, he's got everything that you need mentally to do those kind of things, and he's going to go for it. And yeah, he's a different animal. And he probably didn't get enough pub this weekend just because of everything else that was going on.
100% agree again.
But it's I mean, he'll get his due, and I mean it's awesome. Selfishly, I wish the dude could wrestle in college. You know, I would love to see him against some of the best out there. But you know, I get football is where he's leaning. So, but yeah, just so much talent there. There was just so much dang talent everywhere.
Completely agree.
Nick, we could talk all day about this, but unfortunately we have to close up shop. Thanks for joining us. We hopefully talk again soon.
Nobody does it better, Nick. I tell you that every year. You're the man.
I appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, you too, Nick. That's Nick Rubek, wrestling writer for the Omaha World-Herald. That's all for the show today. Thank you for joining us. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal coming your way this afternoon on Hail Varsity Radio. We will see you tomorrow on Coffee and Cream.